Imagine you are living 50,000 years ago. There are no hospitals, no supermarkets, no books, no schools, and no one has written down everything your group needs to know to survive. Now imagine the oldest person in your group suddenly disappears. They may not be able to run as fast as the hunters. They may not be strong enough to fight a predator. They may not even be able to walk long distances. So why keep them around? Because they may know things that nobody else does. Where water appears after the dry season, which plants can be eaten, which ones can make you sick, where animals migrate, which caves are safe, which mountains should never be crossed during certain seasons, and what happened the last time the environment became dangerous. For ancient humans, that knowledge could be worth more than physical strength. And this may help explain one of the strangest features of our species. Humans can live for decades after they are no longer able to reproduce. That is unusual among mammals. So why did evolution allow humans to live so long? One possibility is that older people weren't simply surviving for themselves. They were helping the entire group survive. And one of the most important things they provided was knowledge. Imagine a child growing up in a world with no Google. They don't know where the nearest river is. They don't know which berries are safe. They don't know what clouds mean. They don't know where predators usually travel. They have to learn everything from someone. And trial and error is dangerous. If an experienced hunter makes a mistake, the group may lose food. If a child makes the same mistake with a poisonous plant, there may not be a second chance. So ancient humans didn't just inherit tools, they inherited information. And older people had something incredibly valuable: time. They had seen more seasons, more droughts, more storms, more migrations, more births, more deaths, more failed hunts, and more successful ones. A young hunter might know how to track an animal. An older person might know when that animal usually disappears from the region. That difference matters, because survival isn't just about knowing what to do, it's about knowing when to do it. But grandparents may have contributed something else. Children. Human babies are incredibly demanding. A newborn cannot walk, it cannot gather food, it cannot defend itself. And for years, children require enormous amounts of care. That means parents cannot always do everything themselves. Someone has to carry the child, watch them, feed them, teach them, protect them. And while parents are hunting or gathering, someone else can keep the children alive. This is where older members of the group could become extremely important. They could help care for children while younger adults searched for food. And that creates something powerful. Parents can spend more time obtaining resources while other members of the group help raise the next generation. Scientists sometimes describe this broader pattern as cooperative breeding. Humans don't raise children completely alone. We rely heavily on other people, and grandparents can be part of that support system. But there is an even deeper advantage: teaching. Imagine an elderly woman who has spent 50 years learning which plants grow after the rains. She may not be able to walk 10 kilometers anymore, but she doesn't need to. She can teach the younger generation. She can point toward a plant and say, "Not that one, this one." She can remember where food was found years earlier. She can explain which roots must be cooked, which seeds should be avoided, which river becomes dangerous after heavy rain. And suddenly, her knowledge becomes useful even when her body becomes slower. Her experience can be transferred to someone who is physically stronger. That creates a powerful combination: young bodies, old knowledge. And this may explain something fascinating about human evolution. Humans don't just survive through physical adaptations. We survive through cumulative knowledge. One generation learns something, the next generation adds something. Then the next generation adds more. Eventually, the group knows far more than any single person could discover alone. An experienced elder might remember a technique for making tools. A hunter might learn a better way to track animals. A parent might discover how to prepare a difficult food safely. And those lessons can spread through the group. The information doesn't die with one person. It becomes part of the group's memory until someone forgets it, or until the last person who knows it dies. And that could be dangerous. This makes losing an experienced elder very different from simply losing another person. Imagine a group living through an unusually severe drought. Everyone is struggling. The rivers are shrinking. Animals are disappearing. Food is becoming scarce. Then one older member remembers something. Decades earlier, there was another drought, and during that drought, people traveled toward a particular valley. There was still water there. There were edible plants, and animals gathered nearby. The younger generation never experienced that drought, but the elder did. That memory could suddenly become a survival map, not written on paper, stored inside a human brain, and grandparents may have passed down something even more important than survival techniques: stories. Ancient stories weren't necessarily just entertainment. They could preserve information: a dangerous place, a seasonal migration, a poisonous plant, a flood, a mountain route, a social rule, a warning about strangers. When information is repeated through stories, children can remember it much more easily. The oldest person in the group could become something like a living library, except this library could walk, it could speak, and it could answer questions. But there's another reason older humans may have mattered. They helped connect generations. A child doesn't only need food, they need to learn how their group works, who is related to whom, who can be trusted, which behaviors are acceptable, how to cooperate, how to resolve conflicts, how to make tools, how to find food, how to communicate. Much of this knowledge cannot simply be discovered alone. It has to be learned from other people. And older members had spent decades participating in that social world. They knew the relationships, they remembered old conflicts, they knew family histories. They understood traditions. In a small group, that knowledge could hold people together. Of course, this doesn't mean every ancient human lived with their biological grandparents. We shouldn't imagine one universal prehistoric family structure. Human societies were incredibly diverse. Some people died young. Some groups had few older adults, and archaeological evidence rarely allows us to know exactly who cared for whom, but the broader pattern is important. Humans are unusually dependent on cooperation, and older adults can contribute in ways that have nothing to do with physical strength. They can provide knowledge, childcare, food processing, teaching, social support, and memory. Their value isn't always visible until you imagine the group without them. Think about what happens when a computer loses its stored information. The machine might still work, but suddenly, it doesn't know anything. Ancient human groups had no computers, no libraries, no written databases. Their most important information was stored in people, and some of those people had been alive for decades. They had witnessed things nobody else remembered, so keeping them alive wasn't simply an act of kindness. In some situations, it could be an investment in the survival of everyone. The hunter brought food back to the group, the parent raised children, and the elder helped make sure the group didn't forget what it had already learned. Different generations performed different jobs. Together, they created something no single human could create alone: a survival system. And perhaps that's one of the most important reasons humans became so successful. We don't just pass genes to our children, we pass knowledge. A child inherits a body from their parents, but they can inherit an entire lifetime of experience from everyone around them. And the older generation can act as a bridge between the past and the future. They remember what happened, they teach what worked, they warn about what failed. Then the younger generation takes that knowledge and adds something of its own. That cycle can continue for thousands of years. So why did ancient humans need their grandparents? Not because grandparents were stronger, not because they could outrun predators, and not because they could hunt better than everyone else. They were valuable for something much harder to replace: experience. They carried information that took decades to collect. They helped raise children, they taught skills, they remembered landscapes, they preserved stories, and they connected one generation to the next. In a world without books, hospitals, schools, or computers, an experienced human being could be one of the most valuable resources a group possessed. Because sometimes, the person who knows how to survive isn't the strongest person in the group. It's the person who remembers what happened last time. And that may be one of the reasons humans didn't just survive for thousands of generations, but became the species that eventually remembered its entire history. And maybe that is what makes grandparents so important in human history. They weren't simply old members of the group. They carried knowledge that could keep everyone alive. Where to find water, which plants were safe, when animals migrated, which places were dangerous, and what to do when the environment suddenly changed. For ancient humans, Losing an experienced elder could mean losing decades of survival knowledge. So the next time you see a grandparent teaching a child something, remember that this relationship may have helped shape humanity itself. Because sometimes, the oldest person in the group was also one of the most valuable. If you enjoyed this journey into humanity's forgotten past, subscribe for more stories about ancient humans and the hidden behaviors that shaped our species, and I'll see you in the next one.